going to get started. So the problem is the Agile Manifesto is the Agile Manifesto for software development. And if you look at the principles in the Agile Manifesto, they talk about software and products and how we get everything out for feedback and how do we have double loop learning and all that good stuff. It talks about the team, talks about the product, which led a lot of people to think we don't need managers when we use an Agile approach. However, too much of what passes for management, even now in supposedly Agile organizations, has very little to do with leadership and everything to do with control. So if you think about control and leadership and agility, I don't get where the control actually works. The control does not help you. So let's talk about why management exists. Management exists to organize for the purpose of the organization, right? So every organization has a reason to exist. That's the innovation. And that means that managers have to manage themselves and then create a harmonic whole by leading and serving others. So the way I think about this is when I think about my actions and I think about how they affect the culture, I can then understand how my actions might make people feel, and then I can act towards the purpose of the organization. So there are 7 principles. I'm not going to walk you through them. I will highlight them as I go through. So let me talk first about how great managers manage themselves. Oh, and I expect questions in the chat. So let me talk first about congruence. Congruence is where we balance the needs of ourselves and the other person in the conversation and the entire context. So if I think about this, a lot of what happens in organizations is that the organization blames other people for not doing their work. So if you think about everything with performance management, that's all about blaming, right? We look for things that somehow people did not do right. I'm not sure that that's useful at all. I would much rather know what have I done well so I can reinforce that and then figure out what small things to experiment with changing. We also placate other people in the organization. If you have ever worked for a manager or for a team lead of some sort, where somebody else asked, can you please do this one more thing, even though you didn't plan for that one more thing? And that person says, we'll try. That will try is placating that other person with a request, especially if you use an iteration-based approach to Agile, such as Scrum. If you use Scrum and somebody asks you to add one more thing after you've already planned for the iteration, you're placating that person. Then there's super reasonable, where you forget that people are involved in the conversation, right? We're not thinking about ourselves. We're not thinking about the other person. We're just being reasonable. You shouldn't think that way. My husband is actually fond of saying that to me. You should like asparagus. I don't, right? He's being super reasonable about it. We laugh at that, by the way. That's one of the many things that we laugh at. Irrelevant is when you don't even consider anything, right? You're not thinking about yourself. You're not thinking about the other person. You're not thinking about the context. You're just out in left field. When we're congruent, we balance ourselves, the other, and the context. And that allows us to have a reasonable conversation, to have reasonable communication and collaboration with the other people with whom we work. So let me talk about just one myth about managing yourself, that managers believe in indispensable employees. So way back when I was a programmer, my boss said to us on a Friday afternoon, literally 3:30 on a Friday afternoon, you know, it's time for us to fix this editor once and for all. This is back in the days of mini computers. It was a lot of roll your own. For editors, we patched the operating system. We did all kinds of stuff. We were very close to the machine. One of the guys I worked with, named Steve, said, I'll do the editor this weekend. And we all kind of looked at him and said, we're getting off in a couple of hours. Why don't you come to the bar with us? We'll drink a beer, because we were all single at the time, right? So we'll drink a beer. We'll talk about the editor. He said, I don't need you guys. It's totally fine. I will just do it this weekend, and you can use my wonderful code on Monday. He actually said that because he was quite good. And my manager believed he was a 10X guy. So yeah. So we all said, you sure you don't want to come to the bar with us? No. He decided to start on the editor right then and there. We went to the bar. We had a lovely time. We got in on Monday morning, and it was clear Steve had not gone home. He had not showered. He had not changed his clothes. He had slept in the office. He was really kind of sticky. You know how people are after they've gone through 2 or 3 all-nighters. It was not happy. I thought he was unhappy and kind of icky. So he said to us, here's the editor. I made this for you. And I'm going home now to take a shower and sleep. We were all very happy that he did that. So I, of course, started up the editor, and it crashed. And we figured out a bunch of stuff. I would now call what we did. We paired, we did a little mobbing, right? A bunch of us were around one monitor looking at it. And we couldn't fix all of it. We just couldn't do it. He came back in the afternoon around 3 or 4 in the afternoon. I said to him, it's not working. He said, but I made it. It worked on my machine. Right? That phrase has been around for a long time. And my boss said, well, Steve did it. It should work. And I said, it does work, right? We already fixed these 4 or 5 things, and we decided it was not worth going through anymore, because while you thought that you had done a great job all by yourself, now it's not working for us. So my boss was upset. Steve was upset. All of us were upset. We finally threw out all of his code and redid it as a team, as we should have done from the beginning. So the problem is, when you believe in indispensable employees, you often offer them some kind of really big piece of work that they need to involve other people in. And when you also believe in indispensable employees, you have a queue of work that lines up behind that person. So the notion of a single hero can work by him or herself, that just does not work. And it really does not work at all for Agile organizations. So anytime you see heroics or heroes, and I'm not talking about just men here, women can be heroes also, right? This is an equal opportunity myth. So really think about what that means for how you create a collaborative cross-functional team. The more you reward heroes, the less you reward the collaborative cross-functional team. So that's a myth about what managers believe. So when I think about the principles for managing yourself, I want to think about how I can build empathy for the people who do the work. If my boss had listened to any of us, right? Not just me, I was the big mouth, but not just me, any of us, he would have said, oh, maybe we need all of us to work on this together. And especially if you can say, as a manager or as a leader, I don't know, that builds safety for everybody else to admit that they can say, I don't know. So these principles for managing yourself are really quite important. So let me talk about leading and serving others. So leading and serving is not directing and controlling, but that's what great managers do. Whoops. So I want you to put in the chat, think back to the best manager you had. How did you feel when you worked there? And what do you remember? You might remember the work or the product or the teams or anything else. The best manager you ever had. Inspired, comfortable. Yeah. What do you remember? Confident, safe and acknowledged. I really like that. Trust, challenge and supported. Yeah, challenge is actually a big thing. That goes to mastery. Autonomy, set a clear direction for the team. They trusted me. Yeah, not micromanaging. That goes to trust. Happy to do the work they assigned me. I was confident, inspired. I felt encouraged and growth. So what do you remember? Do you remember any of the people on the team? Do you remember the work, how you worked, or what the product was? What do you remember? Looking at the chat. The team, the work, all of it. Thank you, Marcos. And the team. Let's see if I can get a third. Able to train others. Oh, that's very nice. Oh, very, very nice. I remember my leader giving men and women under him freedom to make leadership decisions, even the ones at the bottom of the totem pole. Yeah, that's really great. So you remember the culture of the organization. Okay, so let's stop right there. I want you to think about just one of your terrible managers, because I'm sure you had terrible managers. In fact, I'm going to see if I can put a line in the chat so that we have a new, we start a new thing. If you think back to just one of your terrible managers, how did you feel when you worked there? And do you remember any of the work, except to remember how you felt about it? So how did you feel and what do you remember? Oh, betrayed in the dark, defeated. Oh my goodness. Stressed, anxious, belittled. Oh, what have you done lately? I really hate that. That's such a blaming thing. Demotivated, always on the verge of being attacked. Yeah. And do you remember anything except how you felt? Oh, yeah. Frustrated, overworked, low energy, an oppressive manager. Okay, so I'm gonna no trust. Maybe somebody else can put a line in the chat because I want you to shake it off, right? Just shake it off. Stop it, right? People always remember how you make them feel, regardless of your position in the organization. So what I find so interesting is that we think that managers are official leaders, but leaders in the organization people always remember how they felt when you worked with them. So let me get here. What I find is that too many managers have really outdated assumptions and they color those management actions. What I find is so many people think still in theory X. And if you think about, again, the performance management system, that says people avoid work and people need controlling and people don't want responsibility and that only money motivates people. And people have no creativity except for getting around the rules, right? That's theory X. Theory Y says people want to master their work. And think about agility and think about how we ask teams to do work that we don't even know if they can do, that people can manage themselves, especially as a team, that people seek responsibility, that people want to learn and accomplish something much greater than they are, and that people are creative. So what I find so interesting is we expect people to get to work, regardless of if we actually physically go to work or if we're remote, right, with everybody, or that people can, and we somehow get to work fed, clothed, and clean enough, right? Especially if we're remote. We all manage to get to work on relatively on time. We master challenges all the time. We take responsibility in our personal lives all the time. We have places that we live, we have responsibilities to other people, and we fulfill those responsibilities. So I say that people can do the job, right? They might need some support, they might need some training or education, but it's all about your expectations. People live up or down to your expectations of them. So really think about that when you think about how you assume and how your managers assume that people are. So there's all kinds of leading and serving other myths. Let me talk about marginally useful people on a team. Way back when I was a director of many things, and my version control guy had to leave on a Friday. He had a family emergency. He told me at noon he was leaving on that Friday. He was not even giving 2 weeks notice. He was driving, I'm in the Boston area. He was driving out to Detroit where his family was to manage the crisis that was there. I said, "You can't give me any more time." He said, "No, I'm just not." So, okay, fine. That was the situation. I did not have any choice except to live with that situation. So a colleague of mine, Susan, had been a version control person in a previous company. She was now between jobs, and I asked her, "Are you available to start on Monday?" And we agreed. She was available. We agreed. I didn't notice. I did not actually look for her to interview with the other people on the team. I felt as if I was under a lot of pressure, and therefore I needed to hire somebody right away. The team also agreed I needed to hire somebody right away. Fine. So she comes in on Monday. She's not a really good cultural fit with the rest of the team. So I offered her feedback. I gave her coaching. I thought that things were getting better. And so she was kind of a bull in a china shop kind of a person. I know you might be thinking I'm talking about myself. No, this is actually another person. And so Susan butted heads a little bit with the team, but I thought that after the end of the third week, we were kind of in the groove. I was still offering her feedback. I was still offering her coaching, but I thought that she was succeeding more often than not. So the following Tuesday, right, this is 3.5 weeks after Susan has started, my entire team goes to the door of my office and says, "It's either her or us. We're all going to leave if you don't fire her." So tell me what's going on, I said. They gave me more and more explanations of what's going on. I said, "Okay, can I keep her around until Friday so I have a shot of finding somebody else?" And as a person, they all said, "No, we want her gone. We want her gone today." So I feel as if I'm in the same position I was 3.5 weeks ago, except now I have a person I might be able to get another 2 weeks out of, but my team says no. So I said, "Okay, I will figure out what to do, but you need to help me, right? I will not keep a marginally useful person on the team, but you somehow need to pick up the slack. I don't know how to use the version control system, and I'm not doing that kind of work. I'm managing. Who here will pick up the version control system?" So 2 people decided that they would pick it up. They said that they would spend the rest of the day with Susan to figure out what she had done. She left that afternoon. Yes, I had to buy out the rest of her contract, but now we had all of the people in the organization doing the work that we needed. So I was wrong for hiring her without checking with the rest of the team. I thought that I was doing a good enough job of feedback and coaching, but she was just not sufficiently congruent with the rest of the people in the organization. She blamed them. She was too abrasive as a person to be able to do the work that we needed her to do. So instead of keeping her on the team, I agreed with my team. I could have overruled them, and they might have stayed, right? Very few people actually quit that day, even if they say that they will. But that said to me, the fact that they wanted to all quit that day, that said to me, I had a marginally useful person on the team. The faster you get rid of the marginally useful people, even if you exclude them, even if you cannot fire them, you take them away from the team. The team's cycle time goes up dramatically. The team is much more successful when you don't keep these people on the team. Now, so when managers lead and serve, the team really finds their flow. That's when they can collaborate, they learn individually and as a team. This team totally did, and they focused on their one purpose. So when I think about the principles for leading and serving others, again, this building a safe environment. I taught that team how to offer feedback and coaching. And while some people did not want coaching from me, we all appreciated how we managed to give feedback to each other. We encouraged experiments and learning, and we caught people succeeding. It turns out reinforcing feedback is much more useful than change-focused feedback. Do I want change-focused feedback? Of course, right? And so I offered Susan change-focused feedback. I also offered her reinforcing feedback so that when she did things well, she did them better, right? So I find that the more we offer feedback, especially reinforcing feedback, so people do more of what they know is good, that works out much better for me than any kind of change-focused feedback. So for example, one of my bosses actually gave me very valuable feedback in my second job out of school. He said, you get all your projects to about 97%, 98% of the way done, and you don't get them over the line. So I said, oh, and this was at my yearly review. I had been there for about 14 months by then because he was slow to offer me the feedback at my performance evaluation. And that's when he said, no, it's been everything, all 8 projects this year. I said, why did you wait so long? Right, I offered him feedback. He said, I thought I was supposed to. I said, first of all, I'm going to try and finish my upcoming projects faster and better now. So I want feedback from you about that, because if I don't get it right away, I want to learn what I can do. And then I don't want you to wait a year to give me feedback. So the motion of feedback can tie into experiments and learning and catching people succeeding. I find that if we only think about these 3 principles for leading and serving others, we tend to be a lot better. So let me go to the third part, which is leading for innovation. Peter Drucker said, every organization needs one core competence, innovation. And I say it's management innovation. I find that the more we innovate for management, the less we lead for thinking about the way things were in the 20s and the 30s and the 40s and the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. The bad old days really were the bad old days. We can do much, much better now. So what I find is that there's all kinds of tactical work that managers spend a lot of time micromanaging, right? The senior managers micromanage the directors, and the directors micromanage the first level managers, and the first level managers micromanage the teams. So managers are way too focused on execution and the immediate and the how and copying what other people do. It's all short-term thinking, short-term actions. Instead, we need to have enough of the strategic thinking, not just for the products, not just for the organization, but for the process and the products and the teams and what we need to do that's unique to our context. So think about your managers and where they spend their time. So a lot of, there's all kinds of organizational leadership myths. Let me give you just one that I find pervasive in a bunch of my clients. A lot of them think that it's fine to standardize on how other people work, especially their Agile approach. So I have a client who wanted to standardize on Scrum. I had been teaching my version of Agile project management for them. I taught 7 or 8 classes. It was really useful. And that's when I had learned that they had 3 kinds of teams. They had mostly product-oriented teams where that team could use Scrum because they didn't have very many interruptions at all. Then they had a mixture of product and production support teams. Those teams had a fair amount of interruptions. You can imagine with production support, right? You expect interruptions. And then there was a security team who was mostly reactive with a little bit of trying to do more proactive work. But this was a large financial institution, and they didn't quite have enough people in the security team. So the security team was mostly reactive. So the security team used Kanban. Totally. They never used any iteration. They were unable to plan for even a week at a time. Things change too often. The production support people had this kind of mixture. They used a form of Scrum that I call Scrumban, or maybe that's what other people call it. They used the time box as a cadence, but they left a lot of time for interruptions. And those product teams, the feature teams, they were able to use Scrum. So they had a new CIO come in. The CIO calls me up, says, Johanna, I really want you to train everybody in Scrum. And I say, well, you got these 3 kinds of teams. I'm not sure Scrum is the answer. I'm happy to train them in my regular workshop. That's been working out really well for all of you. He said, no, I want to measure their velocity. I want to manage by velocity. That's also the managed by spreadsheet thing, that myth. So I said, I don't recommend management by velocity because it's very easy to game that. Instead, cycle time will help, and aging, actually, the lean metrics often offer you more valuable information than velocity. Okay. You're wrong, he says. I am? Okay, yes, you are. I've done this before, and he mentioned another large organization who had already reached out to me because their Agile transformation was now down the tubes because he had tried to implement Scrum. And those were his words, implement Scrum there also. So I didn't say anything about that. I said, what do you want from me? Because I was not altogether sure. He said, I want a proposal from you to transform this entire organization of 120 people inside of a month. I said, I don't know how to do that. Wait, I can teach people Scrum. I can teach them my other stuff, the stuff that I know that you need better. But I can teach them Scrum if you want. That's not going to give you a transformation inside of a month. He said, you don't understand, right? And that's the finger of blame. You don't understand. I know what I want. I want you to teach it. They seem to like you, although I don't know why. There's all kinds of good, really useful, juicy stuff here. So I finally gave him a proposal. I sent it by PDF, and he called me about 10 minutes later. He had put me on speakerphone. I heard him banging on the table. I heard him waving paper around. He said, you don't respect me. I said, I do respect you. I do respect what you want to achieve. He said, if you did respect me, you would have only given me a proposal for $5,000. It can't cost any more than $5,000 to teach everybody in this organization and to transform inside of a month. So I don't know how many of you are laughing. You should all be laughing because you know that changing a culture takes a lot more than a month. So he wanted to impose a standard, an Agile standard on every single person. And I think about agility, which is taking a small step as part of a collaborative team and learning from that, right? Learning how things go and reflecting and figuring out what you will do similarly and what you will do differently the next. So yeah, this business of standardizing one agile approach on everybody is crazy. It's the same for your boards, right? Anytime any manager wants to impose a board on you, you just say, no, thank you, and then create your own board. So what I find is that when we embrace the organization's messiness, right? This particular organization had three roughly kinds of teams that all understood how they needed to work. They understood sort of how they needed to work together. It was not regimented at all. It was totally messy. And you can embrace the organization's messiness if you can define the organization's why. That allows you to iterate on the strategy and plan for change. So the innovation principles are all about the purpose for your organization. Why, if you don't know why your organization exists, you can never figure out what you need to do for innovation. Now, you can extend that purpose to yourself as a leader and to your team. You all need to know the various whys all up and down the organization. If you have an overarching goal, then you can seek outcomes by optimizing for that. I see a lot of organizations who don't actually have a good handle on their project portfolio. They have way too much work in progress. And because they have way too much work in progress, well, I should say the reason why they have way too much work in progress is often because every single manager has his or her own goal. That means they're not collaborating as a management team. Now, exercise your value-based integrity, especially saying no to more work. I find that if my clients just manage, and this is not easy, I should never say just in front of this, but if you can say, how can you manage all of our work in progress? You are much more likely to figure out what is most important and what is least important and get stuff through your system much, much faster. So think about what your organization rewards. The more we reward heroics, the more we reward individuals. That's all about resource efficiency, where every single person does their part. And all of these arrows here, when you hand off from one person to the next, those are potential delays. Instead, if your organization also rewards flow efficiency, working as a collaborative team, where you don't necessarily have to mob everything. You can swarm, you can work in triads, but the more your team works together and limits its work in progress, the more you work in flow efficiency. And that works much, much better. So the problem is with this focus on resource efficiency, then managers manage via cost accounting. That means that they believe that divide and conquer works, right? You can divide up all the work and parcel it out to the various people. That it's okay to have inventory of partially finished work, and that cost accounting works for software. The problem is cost accounting arose from slavery, and that resource efficiency thinking, right? Caitlin Rosenthal really nails it in this book called Accounting for Slavery. The more we think about resource efficiency, how do we focus on every single person and what they are doing? How do we optimize for the person? We're not optimizing for the team. We're not optimizing for the product, and we're not optimizing for the strategy. That's all antithetical for Agile approaches. So we need to change. We need to adapt how we work, especially at the management level. Managers can change this. That's because managers create and refine the culture. So Shine talks about artifacts, values, and assumptions. But if we think about what culture really is, how do people treat each other? What can people discuss? And what does the organization and the manager reward? The more we think about this especially the reward structure, the more we think about what makes sense for an agile organization and agile managers. That's because Lewin's equation says behavior is a function of the person and the environment. If I know how you will reward me, I will do that. I will optimize for those rewards. So this is, I find this quote very telling. The culture of any organization is shaped by the worst behavior the leader is willing to tolerate. That's one of the reasons you cannot tolerate people who are only marginally useful, because you tolerate them, that allows other people to only be marginally useful. So I've suggested all kinds of changes to your agile management thinking and habits. I am not under any illusion that you can click your fingers and change your what you do right now, or that your managers can. I'm a big believer in progress, not perfection. I'm not asking you to change your beliefs. I'm asking you to experiment with new behaviors, and always start with yourself, because people always remember how you made them feel. And if you don't know why you're doing this work, nothing else matters. So these are the 7 principles. I hope that we stay in touch in some way. I'm going to stop the share, as I'm sure that you have questions, and I would like to see your smiling faces.